A doctor looked him dead in the eye, and said the words no one is ever ready to hear. "You're probably going to be in a wheelchair in 5 years." Montel Williams didn't flinch. He didn't cry. He just sat there, frozen, trying to process how this could be happening to him. A decorated naval officer. A man loved by millions. A man whose entire life was built on discipline, control, and strength. But here's what almost nobody knew. This wasn't sudden. This was the ending of a nightmare that had already been going on, for 20 years. 20 years of unexplained pain. 20 years of doctors shrugging their shoulders. 20 years of a man hiding agony behind a camera-ready smile, because the show had to go on, and America needed him to look strong. While millions of people watched him host one of the biggest talk shows on television, Montel was secretly battling fire in his legs, sudden blindness, and a body that seemed to be turning against him for no reason at all. And what came after that diagnosis was even harder than the diagnosis itself. A secret battle with painkillers. A fight to stay standing. A decision that would eventually take him halfway across the world, chasing a cure no one in America could give him. This is the real story of Montel Williams, the years of silence, the hidden struggle, and the moment he finally chose to stop hiding. Because what he did next didn't just change his own life. It changed the lives of millions of people just like him. To understand how far he fell before he rose, you have to go back to who he was before any of this began. Montel didn't start in show business. He started in the military. He became the first black Marine ever selected to attend the Naval Academy Prep School, eventually earning his commission as a naval officer. He spent months at a time submerged underwater on classified assignments most people will never understand. Discipline wasn't just something he believed in. It was how he survived. So when he stepped into television, he brought that same discipline with him. In 1991, the Montel Williams Show launched, and it exploded. He wasn't just another face reading cue cards. He connected with people. He built programs to get his guests real help, real counseling, real second chances. Audiences didn't just watch Montel. They trusted him. By the mid-90s, he was winning Emmys. He was one of the most recognizable faces in daytime television. Millions of people invited him into their homes every single day. From the outside, it looked like the perfect story. A war hero turned beloved TV icon. Admired. Respected. Untouchable. But behind the cameras, something was already breaking. For years, Montel had been secretly dealing with symptoms that terrified him. Burning, stabbing pain in his legs and feet, like someone had shoved a hot iron into his heel and left it there. Sudden episodes of blindness that would come out of nowhere and vanish just as fast. And every time he brought it to a doctor, he got the same answer. "We don't know what's causing it." He worked around it anyway. He served in the Navy through it. He hosted a national television show through it. He raised 4 children through it. For 2 decades, Montel Williams was living a double life, the powerful public figure everyone admired, and the private man quietly falling apart, with no idea what was happening inside his own body. And the hardest part wasn't the pain. It was not knowing. But that was about to change, and the truth, when it finally came, would be more devastating than anything he could have imagined. By the late 90s, Montel was standing at the very top of his career. His show was thriving. His name was everywhere. And yet, behind closed doors, his body was sending warning after warning that he could no longer ignore. The pain was getting worse. The blindness was happening more often. This was a former competitive bodybuilder, a man who had spent his whole life proving how strong his body could be. And now that same body felt like the enemy. Doctor after doctor offered explanations that didn't fit. One told him to simply stop lifting so much weight and he'd feel better. Reasonable on the surface, but leaving him even more lost underneath. He kept pushing. Appointment after appointment. Always hoping this would be the one where someone finally had an answer. Instead, he kept hearing the same 4 words. We don't know why. For a man who solved every problem through sheer willpower, this was unbearable. You can't out-train a mystery. You can't outwork a diagnosis that doesn't even exist yet. And there was something else quietly working against him the whole time, something buried in outdated medical assumptions that would end up costing him 20 years of his life. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what was coming next. In 1999, everything came crashing down at once. Stepping off a plane, Montel was hit with pain so intense in his feet and legs that he could barely stand. This time, he finally found a specialist willing to dig deeper than "we don't know." And what that specialist found, changed his life forever. Multiple sclerosis. A disease quietly attacking his brain, his spinal cord, his nervous system. The same disease that had apparently been hiding inside him, for 2 decades. But the truth behind this was even more shocking. For years, doctors widely believed MS mainly affected white patients of European descent. Montel later discovered this outdated bias may be exactly why his own diagnosis was missed for so long. It would take uncovering his own family history. Scottish ancestry passed down through his mother's side, to finally understand how the disease had reached him at all. 20 years of pain. 20 years of confusion. And the answer had been hiding behind a bias nobody ever told him about. Then came the sentence that would haunt him. His doctor looked him straight in the face and told him, given the type of MS he had, he would likely be in a wheelchair within 4 to 5 years. He was stunned. Not because he thought he was invincible, but because his entire life, he believed MS simply wasn't something that happened to someone like him. Now he had a choice. Accept that prognosis as his future, or fight it with everything he had left. And what happened next would test him harder than anything the military ever had. The physical pain from MS is brutal enough on its own. But the fight to manage that pain, quietly pulled him somewhere far more dangerous. To survive the nerve pain, Montel turned to painkillers. What started as relief slowly became something he could no longer control. Years later, he would finally admit the truth publicly: his fight with MS had led him into a real struggle with opioid dependence. A battle that played out almost entirely behind the scenes, while he kept showing up, kept smiling, kept performing the role America expected from him. Imagine carrying that secret while still hosting a national television show. Imagine standing under bright lights, cameras rolling, while quietly fighting a disease attacking your nervous system, and a growing dependency on the very medication meant to save you. This was the breaking point. The moment the public image and the private reality could no longer stay separate. And that's when everything started to shift. Montel made a decision most people in his position never make. He chose to face it. He chose to get help. He refused to let the disease, or the addiction, write the ending to his story. But beating addiction was only half the fight, because the disease causing the pain in the first place was never actually going anywhere. So he did something almost no one expected. He looked beyond conventional medicine entirely, searching for anything that could actually slow this disease down. And that search would eventually take him across the world. What he found there would turn him from a patient into one of the most powerful health advocates in the country. Determined not to let his diagnosis become a life sentence, Montel rebuilt his entire life from the ground up. He adopted an anti-inflammatory diet. He pushed his body through rigorous training, treating movement itself as medicine. He became one of the most outspoken advocates for medical cannabis in America, crediting it with relief that painkillers alone never gave him. But he didn't stop there. Searching for treatment unavailable anywhere in the United States, Montel traveled to Europe to undergo an experimental stem cell procedure, hoping for more than symptom relief. Hoping to actually change the course of the disease itself. And he refused to let his story stay hidden any longer. In 1999, just after his diagnosis, he founded the Montel Williams MS Foundation, pouring himself into research and awareness for a disease that had nearly destroyed him in silence for 2 decades. That foundation has since funneled millions of dollars into MS research, including studies that helped uncover a genetic link to the disease. He testified in front of Congress. He spoke at medical conferences around the country. The platform that once hid his pain became the platform he used to expose it. He didn't just survive his diagnosis. He redefined what it meant to live with a chronic illness in the public eye. He proved that wheelchair prediction was never guaranteed, that a disease doesn't get to write someone's ending without a fight. But the story wasn't finished yet, and what came next would be the ultimate proof of everything he had fought for. Decades after that terrifying prognosis, Montel Williams is still standing. Still walking. Still speaking. Now in his 70s, he describes his MS as stable, something he manages, not something that controls him. In recent years, he's opened up more than ever before, sharing the full truth on podcasts and interviews. The 20 years of misdiagnosis. The addiction he once kept hidden from the world. He says, again and again, that he refuses to let this disease, or anyone else's assumptions, define who he is. What started as one of the most painful secrets of his life, became the foundation of his greatest purpose. The man once told he'd be in a wheelchair within 5 years. Is still here, decades later, telling his own story, on his own terms. So what do you think? Could you have survived 20 years of unanswered pain the way he did? Would you have had the courage to speak the truth about an addiction most people hide forever? Tell us in the comments what part of this story hit you the hardest. And if you want more real, powerful stories about the people behind the fame, hit subscribe. We share stories just like this every single week.